Growing food in a small garden can produce a surprisingly big harvest, whether it's on an urban balcony, in a tiny yard, or even on a countertop or windowsill. It feels pretty special to learn and practice the timeless skill of growing your own food and to be able to eat fresh veggies right at home within seconds of picking them. You get to see the full life cycle of it, from seed to seedling to harvesting and eating. And there's something deeply comforting and reassuring when you know how to produce food for yourself. It's also just a great excuse to spend more time outside, and it gives you a deeper appreciation for all the work that goes into producing the food that we buy and eat every day. But gardening can be a bit intimidating, especially in a small space where you might have limitations on size, sunlight, budget, or even just not knowing how to start. We've been growing food on our urban balcony for the past 3 years, and we've completely fallen in love with small space gardening. But it has been a steep learning curve, and there's been a ton of work, research, and trial and error along the way. So to give you a head start on your own gardening journey, we're going to share some of our best tips and advice that we've learned so far from our experience, including how to get started, things we wish we'd known, important things to consider, how to save money as you go, some pros and cons, and more. Space and sunshine. When planning a garden, you should start by looking at what type of space you have to grow food, whether it's a little yard or patch of ground, or maybe a balcony, or even a sunny windowsill. And then basically you need to figure out how much direct sunshine that area gets during the day. You can find out how many hours of direct sunshine a specific plant needs on the back of the seed packet or on the little label that comes with the seedling. But in general, you probably want 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight per day. Fruiting plants that produce things like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers will need more direct sunshine outside than leafy plants like spinach or kale. If you don't have a sunny yard or balcony, you can also grow some things indoors, which is something we enjoyed doing this past winter. Growing sprouts doesn't require any sun or soil, so it's definitely the easiest option to start with. They can be grown in glass jars or bowls or in a dedicated sprouting tray, and you just need a strainer of some kind to be able to rinse and strain them every day. Some popular and tasty seeds for sprouting are broccoli, alfalfa, and mung beans. We always have mason jars in our cupboard, so we just bought these small lids that have mesh integrated into them to make it super quick and easy to rinse them every day. Most sprouts are ready to eat in about 4 or 5 days. Now that we've mastered the art of sprouting, we're planning on growing some indoor microgreens next winter. For growing microgreens, you'll need some soil and a full spectrum light source that mimics natural light. We actually bought some grow lights to start our seedlings indoors for the first time this year, and they worked great, so we'll use those same lights for growing microgreens next year. With the lights, you could even grow herbs like basil and parsley, and probably even some lettuce indoors. So even without access to an outdoor area to grow food in, you can still grow a bit of fresh produce on an ongoing basis at home, which is pretty great. Soil. If you are gardening outside, the next step to think about is your soil. Generally, the best soil for a veggie garden has a good mix of clay, sand, and organic matter so that it drains well and provides nutrients to your plants. If you're growing directly in the ground, you'll probably want to add some compost to the soil to make sure that your plants have lots of nutrients. And if you're growing in containers, you'll want to create your own soil by mixing some outdoor potting mix with a bit of compost or organic fertilizer. One thing we've learned when buying potting mix is that the smaller bags cost way more per liter compared to the bigger bags. So even though they're a bit more annoying to handle, we now buy the bigger bags of soil and we save around 25% on the cost of our potting mix. So that's definitely something to look into. Containers. There are a couple of types of containers that you can choose to grow in. Self-watering containers have a little chamber at the bottom that holds extra water, which can help you water less frequently. It also reduces the chances that your soil will dry out, and it means that water won't leak out onto your balcony and make a mess. Some balconies like ours are uncovered and they get a ton of rain on them, so we don't actually have to worry about water leaking out because our balcony has a drain. But because it's uncovered, we get way too much water in our containers from rain, so we choose containers that have holes in the bottom so that the excess can drain out. If your containers do have holes in the bottom, soil nutrients might leach out along with the excess water, so you'll probably need to add some compost or organic fertilizer to the containers every couple of weeks throughout the growing season, depending on what you're growing. Containers are a bit trickier to grow in than in the ground because you might find that you're either struggling to keep them from being too dry or too wet, so they do require a lot of attention. One other thing to mention about growing on a balcony is that it's important to make sure that you don't exceed the weight limit that the balcony can support, and to avoid trapping moisture under the containers, which could eventually affect the structural integrity of your balcony. We found containers that have little legs on them so that air can circulate underneath, and we even checked out the building code in our area to find out how much weight our balcony can hold per square foot. We actually weighed our containers last year to make sure we were well below the limit. It was all very nerdy, but it made us feel much more comfortable and secure. Picking plants. Picking which plants to grow is definitely the most fun part. Try picking a few things that you know you love to eat on a regular basis to make sure that you'll get the most out of your garden. It's really easy to get carried away with wanting to grow a lot of different veggies, but like with most things in life, starting small and simple is a good way to go. In the first year, we made sure to only plant a handful of staples that we knew we loved to eat on a regular basis. Things like cherry tomatoes, parsley, and basil. It wasn't a lot, but we ate everything we grew, and we developed the habit of caring for the small garden on a daily basis. And then last year and this year, we expanded to include a lot more stuff like kale, edible flowers, snap peas and beans, cucumbers, tatsoi, dill, cilantro, and strawberries, and lots more tasty things. Your garden is specific to you, so you can pick and plant whatever fruits, vegetables, and flowers you want. One of the easiest and most convenient options is to buy seedlings that have already started growing so that you can just transplant them into the soil after the last frost date. The only downside to this is that seedlings are more expensive than buying seeds. For example, just one seedling might cost the same amount as a whole packet of seeds of the same plant. The first year we were gardening, we started off buying mostly seedlings just out of convenience, but we quickly realized it was an expensive way to garden. So last year we started growing a lot more from seed, and this year we grew almost everything from seed indoors with the grow lights, which is going to help us drastically cut down on the cost of planting our garden each year moving forward. The added bonus of growing from seed is that it's even more satisfying to participate in and witness the full growing cycle from the very beginning. Planning. Since we're growing in a small space, we don't have the freedom to plant an unlimited amount of stuff, so we always make a plan to help us maximize our harvest. This year, we made a list of all the plants we wanted to grow and figured out when to start the seeds so that they would be ready to plant outside after the last frost. We also mapped out all of the containers we have so that we could easily visualize how many of each plant we could fit on the balcony. This way, we also knew how many seeds we needed to start. Some plants we're growing just to try them out for the first time or because they provide variety, but with some crops like kale, lettuce, and tatsoi that we want to harvest all summer long, we're going to do succession planting, which basically means that we'll just keep planting new seedlings every couple of weeks so that we can replace the old ones once they've been harvested. By doing this, we're trying to optimize the small space and make sure we always have those nutritious staples ready to harvest every day. Watering and tending. Once you have your seeds or seedlings planted in your sun-drenched, nutrient-rich soil, you just have to water the plants regularly and watch them grow. Whenever you do go out to water the plants, it gives you the chance to keep an eye out for any help the plants might need. If they're falling over, they might need a stake for support. If they're looking unhealthy, they might have a pest or a disease, or they might just need a little bit of fertilizer. For watering, we have a simple watering can that we just fill in our kitchen sink. If we have to go away for more than a day or two, we have an irrigation system that we set up to water the plants for us. It has a pump in a small programmable box, and then it has an intake tube that pulls water from our big storage containers that we fill up with water. and then it waters the garden with an irrigation tube that's divided up into different stakes that you stick into each pot. When the pump is on, it pumps water to each stake and delivers it right to the plant's roots. It's a pretty cool little system. With this setup, we can go away for about a week with no problems. Harvests and meals. When it's finally time to harvest the fruits of your labor, you can enjoy all that fresh, healthy, tasty goodness in your meals. And if you've planned your garden out well, you'll know exactly what you want to do with your harvest. Some of the things we prepare with our harvests include making tabbouleh salad with parsley, mint, and tomatoes, blending batches of pesto with our basil, steaming our snap peas and snow peas and beans, baking nachos with jalapenos and cilantro, and making quick pickles with our cucumbers. We also just add what we grow to every meal that we can, or we eat it right after picking it when it's at its freshest. Cost. One of the big questions we've been asking ourselves since we started growing food on the balcony is whether it's saving us any money compared to buying food from the grocery store. It's a pretty tricky thing to calculate because it would require us to weigh everything that we harvest and then compare it to the price of the same amount of food at the store, while also factoring in our costs, some of which are one-time infrastructure costs like buying the containers, and other costs are more operational like fertilizer and seeds. So the short answer is that in the first 3 years, we think it has cost more to grow our own food at home because of two main things. The first is that each year we've been slowly investing in the materials and tools we needed to start growing, like the containers, the irrigation system, the grow lights, the storage containers, tools, the watering can, and the potting bench. Now that we have everything we need, we won't have to invest money into more infrastructure next year, so this expense will go down to almost zero. And the second thing is that at the start, we were buying those expensive seedlings and expensive soil in small bags, but now that we're growing our own seedlings from seed and buying the less expensive soil in bulk, our operating cost is going to be much lower. To reduce costs even more, you can reuse some of your soil if it wasn't affected by any pests or diseases. You can find secondhand containers instead of buying new, and even save your own seeds at the end of the season. The good news is that we do think that the food we grow at home in our 4th year will finally be cheaper than what we can get at the grocery store, which will be a pretty cool feeling and an extra incentive to keep growing. Pros and cons. Growing food is an incredibly rewarding hobby, and we've found a lot of joy in planting, tending, and harvesting our own crops. We've also come to appreciate just observing the plants at different stages, like seeing a seed that we planted poke its head up from the soil for the first time, or learning about pollination and watching bees stop by our garden to fill up on pollen and nectar. But growing food is also a lot of work, especially when we drive, cart, and carry bags of soil from the store to our building and up onto the balcony, and then have to cart it all back down at the end of the season. Planting and transplanting is hard on the back and the knees, and it's also often really hot or chilly outside when we're working on the garden. And then we're also worrying constantly about the plants whenever the weather's too wet or too dry or too windy, and if we want to go away for more than a day or two, it's a lot of work to set up the irrigation system. But despite all of the challenges that gardening can bring, growing our own food, even in a small space like our balcony, is one of the most beautiful and satisfying things that we do with our time. And there's something really hopeful and inspiring about planting seeds in the dead of winter when there isn't a speck of green to be seen outside, but knowing that an abundant summer harvest is just around the corner. Even though we don't grow all of our own food, we've been surprised by the big harvests that we get even from such a small space. We shared a full tour of our balcony container garden last year, and we'll put a link below if you want to check it out. And if you're already gardening in a small space, or if you're just getting started, leave a comment below so we can all share some tips and ideas. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.